Hi guys, welcome back to Camp Craftopia Takeover. This is the Steampunk week, and our prompt for today is fantasy fashion. I don't know if y'all know a lot about steampunk, but fashion is a huge thing in steampunk, and it involves a lot of corsets. I'm going to try and find some facts to read maybe as I speed this up, because it's going to take a long time to put this together, and I want this to be a shorter video. But what I am going to tell you before I get started is I use this Stamperia, I don't know how to pronounce it, clockwise scrapbooking paper. It took me 2 pieces of paper. It didn't take the entire 2 pieces of paper, but I wanted 2 contrasting patterns, shall we say. I also used this stamp for cutting out hole reinforcers. You don't have to have this stamp. You can just use a big circle punch and then, you know, use a smaller circle punch inside of it, whatever. I'm just using it. It's not part of what was the pattern I downloaded, but the pattern has holes that you lace through, and I just thought that this might be something to use to strengthen them a little bit. Okay, so basically I used my Cricut and downloaded an SVG file. For those who have Cricuts, they know what an SVG file is. For those who don't panic. The same file includes a manual pattern that you can cut out and make this yourself. I specifically picked this pattern because I wanted people who did not have a Cricut to be able to make it as well. I will include the link to where I got the pattern. The pattern was like $3, I believe, down in the description box. So let's move on from here. I first took a piece of paper. I picked out 2 pieces of paper. Let me get rid of this. And I cut out the pattern from my Cricut for a bustier box. Here is my bustier box completed. This was my sample so that I knew that it would work properly and I wouldn't be leading you all astray. I have the gears I made yesterday in it, so it's making some noise. But and then I just used some lace. But you could use the gears to decorate it. You could use metal gears to decorate it. You could use flowers. You could use anything, and we'll look at that at the end. However, this is what our finished product is going to look like, and it does have some capacity to hold brushes, pens, whatever. It does also include handles to make it like a paper purse. I didn't like that. I thought it got in the way of its usefulness for me. Doesn't mean you won't want to do that. So anyway, yeah, so this is what we're making today. A corset slash bustier, but we are using steampunk type materials. So I cut out all the pieces for the pattern. And like I said, I cut out 10 of these eyelet holes to go around the eyelets, so that would strengthen them a little bit. This is the back, and here's the other side of the corset. Okay, so I am going to probably not talk while I put this together. I remember that there was a lot of cursing involved. Not that it's hard, it's just I'm not super good at stuff like that. So yeah, I am going to try and put this together while I film it. I'll probably speed it up a bit. If there's anything important that I need to tell you, I will tell you, but I'll also try and show you. And then at the end, maybe we'll get together and do a little decorating, depending on how long this takes, okay? So I will be back in a moment to do a speed run of how to put this together. There are also instructions included when you download, which are like really super easy to follow. I just printed them out on my printer. This is by Create with an 8 in the middle, Tiv Cuts, and it's called the Bustier Purse. And these are the assembly instructions. And hold on a minute, I don't think it's the right size, but I think I may have included a picture of what the cut file looks like. Again, this is shrunk down. Nope, that's not it. There. See that little tiny picture? That comes full size. I just printed it stupidly small. Anyway, so if you want to make it, you will also be able to make it, and you don't have a Cricut, you'll also be able to make it to cut out manually. Okay, so let me get right to it.
Hi guys, VoiceOver Lord here. I thought that since I was putting this together, I would read to you some information from several sources about steampunk, give you a little background. One of the books I'm using is called Gothic Dreams Steampunk by Henry Winchester. Another is called The Steampunk Gazette by Major Thaddeus Tinker. And the final one is called The Steampunk Bible by Jeff Vandermeer. Steampunk is such a wide and varied term, it's quite difficult to nail down. But in a nutshell, it's a way of looking at the future based on the collective imagination of the past. The past in question is generally defined as the period of Queen Victoria rule in Britain from 1887 until 1901. During this time, the Industrial Revolution caused a huge social and economic change, and steam-powered factories and vehicles completely changed the face of the Western world. However, steampunk doesn't just take ideas from this period. It also takes other parts of history, such as Wild West conflicts and 1930s Art Deco. So, where did it all come from? As we look back through time, it's easy to see things we would now consider steampunk. The design of the submarine in Disney's movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in 1954, or the premiere of Ronald W. Clark's novel Queen Victoria's Bomb from 1967, in which a nuclear weapon is created during the Victorian era. But steampunk as we know it today began primarily as a form of literature in the early 1980s. To begin with, we should clear up the name steampunk. It started as a joke. There was a movement in science fiction to write in a genre known as cyberpunk, when writers began exploring similar concepts but setting them in a pseudo-Victorian world. One of those writers, K.W. Jeter, jokingly coined the term steampunk. The term does not define the genre, nor the year 1987, when Jeter coined the name. The genesis of the scene of steampunk has been a feature of Western culture since the Victorian age itself. Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, even Mary Shelley and Bram Stoker have contributed to the wealth of imagery and ideas steampunk enjoys. Later influences include movies such as Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in 1968 and Wild Wild West in 1999. What steampunk should thank Jeter is for coming up with a name that serves as a signpost to help them find people with similar interests and tastes. Steampunk has developed into a highly creative, artistically inclined community that includes writers, musicians, sculptors, model makers, costume makers, and a host of other disciplines and skills. Steampunks usually try to take some of the very best parts of the past and make them part of a vibrant future. Punk in the 70s was a rebellion against contemporary society. It is evident that steampunks are rebelling, but theirs is a stand against a throwaway society, poor manners, and antisocial behavior, and crude commercialism. Steampunks value good manners and politeness, and think things should be made to a high quality to last, thus helping the environment. While much in their universe is set in a pseudo-historical world that harks back to our Victorian heritage, steampunks do not promote any of the inequalities of the past. Indeed, theirs is a very much all-inclusive community. You will find steampunks of all ages, genders, ethnic backgrounds, and abilities. They come from all walks of life, too, from students and academics to truck drivers and railway engineers, from comedians to lawyers. Steampunk started as a science fiction genre, but it's now a community. It has its own fashions, music, and taste. It's a community that enjoys socialization, often dressing in a distinctive steampunk style. DIY ethic is very strong, as creative steampunks often make or modify everyday objects to fit the neo-Victorian aesthetic. This could be making a wooden brass cabinet for your PC, or a mock ray gun suitable for adventure with Jules Verne. Finding steampunk is an impossible task. Steampunk is a very personal thing, and everyone's idea of what it should be is individual to them. There's no definition and no boundaries to steampunk other than the imagination of the individual. There is, however, a rule. Be nice to one another. This in itself should suffice. Splendid, a rallying cry for steampunks. Be splendid has 3 simple tenets. Be splendid in how you interact with other people. Polite respect makes the world a better place. Be splendid in how you look. No need to fade into the background. And be splendid in all you create in art, fashion, music, literature, even cuisine. Steampunk is undoubtedly a little geeky, but it is happy to flaunt its geek credentials to the world at large. It's a scene where age, gender, ethnicity, ability, sexual orientation, and social background are never seen as barriers. Since steampunk is basically a fantasy that promotes creativity, it is one where various differences are often perceived as advantages rather than a hindrance. The steampunk community attracts all ages. Young and old share a common interest in a scene that parents and children can enjoy together. Steampunk can be done at a low cost. Thrift shops, yard sales, craft and DIY stores all yield their treasures for the less than well-off steampunk. At its origin as a literary movement, steampunk has taken on many forms. In cinema, films such as Wild Wild West in 1999 and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003 rendered steampunk in a larger-than-life scale and populated their worlds with real and imagined characters from the Victorian era. On the small screen, series such as Warehouse 13, episodes of Doctor Who and Castle have embraced steampunk. The movement has even found its way into music and video games, which is a testament to how fluid and pliable it is. Steampunk is far more than just a certain look or an ideology for media. It's an entire subculture. Conventions and events have sprung up around the world in which fans of the subgenre create magnificent costumes and intricate accessories and weapons. Physical and virtual stores cater to steampunk collectors and enthusiasts. There's a whole movement dedicated to modifying and customizing items, such as jewelry or electronic accessories, to steampunk them up. Even the nature of something being steam-powered is a fallacy. Steam is a result of water being heated, and the pressure that this process creates is what drives steam engines. Steam isn't a magical force, although some adherents of the steampunk movement seem to believe it is, and it still requires fuel. Perhaps coal punk or wood punk would be a more apt description, but this doesn't have quite the same ring to it. Best steampunk costumes and characters embrace the duality between the past and present, the normal and the weird. You could, for example, completely go to town with a steampunk costume and festoon every inch of it with cogs, brass plating, and pipes, but it's far better to simply go to town on a single element, such as an artificial arm, a bizarre helmet, or wear a pseudo-Victorian dress for the rest of the outfit. This throws people off kilter and instantly gives them something specific to examine. After all, steampunk is the love child of Hot Topic and a BBC costume drama. Of course, if you dress in purely Victorian style, you'll be mistaken for someone of the 19th century. The word punk was added to steampunk for a reason, and in the late 1970s movement pioneered by both music and fashion. Key to the latter was the idea of recycling items found in charity shops and customizing secondhand clothing with rips and badges. It parallels the steampunk movement nicely, as both are based on ideas of taking something from the past and retrofitting it to create something modern and eye-catching. The punk element in steampunk relies upon layers and modifications on top of standard Victorian dress. The items can be repurposed from just about anywhere in history, from a pair of First World War era flying goggles to a Wild West style 6-shooter or a Victorian pocket watch. Steam powered is a bonus, of course, but intricate clockwork devices work just as well, without the inherent danger of being scalded. Some steampunkers even go so far as to craft prosthetic limbs or exoskeletons from brass pipes and cogs. Dressing up as a steampunk character can be very enjoyable, and it's a unique way to express your character and interests. Before you start, it's a good idea to try and imagine your character and their place in the steampunk world. Were they a dashing adventurer, a quiet inventor, or a war hero? Having an image in your head will make it a lot easier as you piece together your costume. You can also put a steampunk twist on a character from popular culture. What would a Victorian Darth Vader or Professor Dumbledore look like? Cosplay refers to dressing up as a specific character from a movie, book, or TV show and replicating their personality and traits. Steampunk is a great source of ideas for cosplay. There are thousands of characters to choose from, and they look distinctive and often turn heads.
Okay guys, so I think we're gonna decorate now because it seems to be put together rather well, and I'm hoping that the glue dries while I figure out a little bit of our decorations, and then we will lace up the corset and add some florals and such. Do is hopefully, which is not necessarily correct, that my gold wax has not dried up, and we will add a little gold on the edges to kind of make these a little metallic. Squeeze a little bit of this over here on my scrap paper. Unlike our last project, I'm kind of trying to cover a lot of the color that I'm not in love with. So try to use a lot of the gold, and then hopefully the color that shows through will just look like it's part of the metal color. Now, I don't honestly know where I got these flowers from. They were just out of my stash. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna set these aside to dry for hopeful using in the future for decorating. I may not. I have not made up my mind yet. These are some gears that I am repurposing. They were glued to something that I no longer found interesting, and so I just took them off. I have this pearl trim, which I'm probably going to use, and laces, and I'm determining whether I want to use multiple strands of this to tie the corset. It's not very wide, or just use this ribbon, or maybe a combo of both.
Okay, so while I struggle to lace this and you can watch and laugh, I'm going to tell you some more steampunk facts. Steampunk is an appealing subject for artists, so it's broad and versatile. It covers just about every facet of modern art, including sculpture, painting, and digital 3D modeling. More often than not, steampunk art can be used to tell a story, be it a dramatic painting or a sculpted weapon designed for executing a specific mythological beast. Leading art website DeviantArt is a great place to see imaginative paintings with a steampunk aesthetic. Steampunk's growth into fashion, literature, film, and art slowly began to seep and diffuse into other forms of entertainment and culture. Unlike goth and punk movements before it, steampunk influenced music rather than the music influencing it. And unlike games of the past, such as the property developing Monopoly or Murder Mystery Clue, modern-day pursuits have taken on a secondary life, with tabletop and computer-operated role-playing games all given a steampunk spin. You'll find steam-powered contraptions, gaslight, airships, pirates, robots, and ray guns galore with a click of the mouse, a press of the button, or a throw of the die. So let's go back to the origins of steampunk as a genre. You could almost say its beginnings were like one of those old-timey jokes. 3 steampunks walk into a bar. Seriously, it was in the mid-1980s, a century after Jules Verne, that 3 writers most closely associated with the rise of modern steampunk would meet to drink beer in a bar. Then in their early 20s, Tim Powers, K.W. Jeter, and James Baylock lived 10 minutes apart and had read Victorian and Edwardian literature in college. Power recalls that they would read one another's manuscripts and critique them, unaware that they might be creating a whole new subgenre of fiction. So there's also tons of subgenres to steampunk. Steampunk fiction has become so popular that the terms have been coined for several offshoots such as Boilerpunk, Clockpunk, Dieselpunk, Gaslight Romance, Raygun Gothic, and Stitchpunk. Let's talk about a couple of these. Boilerpunk. It's a blue-collar answer to the aristocratic steampunk, incorporating the experiences and hardships of workers actually shoveling coal to bring steam to the upper classes. Clockpunk. Clockwork technologies replace or supersede traditional steam powers in this genre. Dieselpunk. where diesel fuel and nuclear power replace steam power in alternate histories that often have a political component. Gaslight Romance, a mainly British term for alternative histories that have romanticized the Victorian era. Some Brits would argue that all American steampunk is actually gaslight romance. Raygun Gothic. This type of retrofuturism, based in part on Art Deco and streamlined modern styles, has been used for a variety of science fiction settings, usually in movies. Punk. Fiction influenced by the DIY and craft elements of steampunk, with a prime example being the animated movie 9, in which a cute Frankenstein doll, creatures stitched together from bits of burlap sack, try to save the world. Let's go back and talk about some of the art of steampunk. Steampunk creators are often hard to pin down. Despite their passion for a shared aesthetic, some self-identify as artists and adhere to the general protocols and terminology of that community. Others self-identify as makers, which puts them in an entirely different realm, along with tinkers, machinists, carpenters, and the like. What's the main difference? Steampunk makers typically restore obsolete devices and modify modern technology. Steampunk artists create installations, sculptures, and other objects inspired by the steampunk aesthetic. This art often reflects itself in fashion. A lot of the artists work in fashion. Let's talk about some of the styles of steampunk fashion. Some people dress as like a street urchin style. These folks dress in the most punk styles of steampunk, talking about tatters, filthy, safety pins, old leather, bashed-in derbies, and the like. This style of dress is functional and costs little to hack together. This nods smugly to the lower class of society. It looks good dirty, torn stockings puddled around one's knees or tacked up with garters and pins. Wear your spoiled petticoats over a pair of knee breeches. Ladies, gentlemen, there's nothing cooler than suspenders over a tea-stained, sleeveless undershirt, especially if it shows off those steampunk tattoos. Search for garments at thrift shops and antique stores. Tear up old lingerie or suits scavenged from Goodwill. Add your own trims or pockets. Tea-stained striped tights or white shirts or creatively bleached sections of dark clothing. If you're unable to sew, pin, or tie fabrics to the proper shape, then solicit advice from one of your friends. Be adventurous and go for a wicked mohawk under your hat or leather and wire-bound bundles of dreadlocks. Tease your hair, shave it all off. Do not fear to splash your hair with vivid dyes. Another fashion would be the tinker. These are risk takers, the doers, the maker of things, who prefer well-designed garments with places for tools, protective eyewear such as blast goggles or other spectacles. Functional clothes that are impervious to spill and grease are ideal. Look for garments made of canvas, denim, leather, wool, or rubber. Locate a vest or jacket with lots of pockets. Think cargo Victorian. Carry your tools of your trade and accessories on a pocketed belt or a harness full of useful implements. Look for treasures at surplus stores or see if you can snag an old lab coat or a rubber apron online. Goggles can be acquired from a plethora of locales, including Army Navy surplus stores, antique shops, and eBay. Another style would be the explorer. Explorers are, by definition, persons who investigate unknown regions. Take this into consideration when dressing. Think tailored garments, but more military influenced and less off the rack. Explorers look fine in earth tones, but let a little color peek out here and there. Silk, linen, tall boots, pith helmets, flying goggles. The list of explorer gear is endless. Try wearing mid-length skirts with the hems buckled up, revealing cotton bloomers. Billowing sleeves, bustled skirts with a tight leather vest or corset are indispensable. Of course, there are many other forms of steampunk dress. These are just a few of my favorites that I wanted to tell you about. Okay guys, so this is my finished product for our day 2 camp takeover, and I didn't really decorate the back or anything, but I still could. But this is corset, which was my second day prompts response, which was fantasy fashion,
and I decided to make a bustier container. So as I said before, I will link where you can buy the pattern for this below, and let me know what you guys think. Have a great week. Have a great month. Be kind to one another. Check out all the rest of the camp counselors. Love you guys. Bye.